Late afternoon light lay soft across the open land, and the tall grass moved like a slow green sea. James McAllister stood by a fence post with a coil of wire in his hands. He liked this hour. It was when the ranch grew quiet and the sounds of the day softened. He could hear cattle far off, a windmill turning, and the creak of leather from his belt when he bent to tie a knot. His hat shaded his eyes, and his mind was on small, steady tasks: a broken rail, a stubborn nail, a strand of barbed wire bright in the sun. He did not expect company. Folks in that part of the territory did not wander without reason. At first he thought the figure near the far rise was a trick of heat. The air shimmered and the land liked to make shapes from light. But the shape kept moving, and soon he could see a woman young with dust on her dress and the front of it torn where it had caught on brush. Her bonnet hung by its strings. Her hair had slipped from its pins. She moved like someone who had run far and kept running because stopping was worse. James set the wire down. He did not reach for anything else. He just watched and listened. The sky felt wider with her there. Small signs told him more than sight alone. The way she held her arms tight to her ribs, the way her breath came in hard pulls, the way she looked behind her more than she looked ahead. He heard a sound he knew well. Hoofbeats. Faint. Not near yet, but there. Like a thought you cannot shake. The woman reached the fence and steadied herself with one hand on the rough rail. For a moment she closed her eyes. He saw the quick tremble at her throat, and he felt a small shift in his own chest like a door opening. He had seen folks tired. He had seen them hungry. He had seen them sick. This looked like none of those. This looked like fear trying to stand up straight and not fall. "Miss," he said, and his voice came out calm. "You're on McAllister land." She nodded, and her eyes opened. They were clear even with the dust on her lashes. "I know," she said. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to trespass." She paused, and her hands shook as she opened a small bundle she held pressed to her chest. Inside was a silver locket on a chain and a piece of pale fabric with neat blue stitches. She lifted both with careful fingers as if they might break. "I took it off. Please." He did not understand at first. He only saw how every word seemed to cost her, like steps taken uphill. He moved slow, one step and then another, until he stood close enough to see the tiny letters sewn into the fabric. They spelled a name. The same name was engraved on the back of the locket, so small it was almost hidden by the curve of the metal. He did not read it out loud. "My name is Clara," she said. "I came from the other side of the river. There is a camp there. I was not safe in it." She swallowed. "This marks a person." I took it off. There was no anger in her voice. There was only that steady tremble held down by will. James looked at her wrists and saw faint red lines made by ties that were now gone. He looked past her to the low hills. The sky above them was deep blue that would soon turn purple. He knew what the coming dark did to courage. It made it swell, and then it made it shrink. A person should not be alone when the light went. He remembered a lesson his father had set down years ago, on a winter night when snow blew under the door. "Help if you can," his father had said. "Help quiet and help quick. Do not make a show of it, and do not make it a debt." He had not always followed that lesson. Life on a ranch was a set of sums to be weighed: time, supplies, risk. But some moments were not sums. They were lines you crossed, and you knew it when you crossed them. "Come inside the fence," he said. "You can sit in the shade and catch your breath." Clara stepped through the gap he had left for wagons and stood with her hands held together, as if the locket and the fabric were a small bird. She looked at the house, low and plain, with a tin roof that shone where the sun touched it. She looked at the barn and the corral and the big cottonwood tree that kept its green a little longer than the others. She took it in and placed herself inside a map of safety. "Do you want water?" he asked. She nodded. He brought a canteen from the saddle that hung on the fence post. She drank small sips, careful as if the water might run away from her. He saw she had manners taught in a home where people minded such things, and he wondered what turn on the road had brought her here, dusty and alone. "I can pay," she said quickly. "I have some coins, and I can sew. I can mend. I can cook." "I didn't ask you for anything," he said, not unkind. She lowered her eyes. "Thank you." The hoofbeats sounded again, a shade nearer. Clara flinched at the sound, even though it was far. He could tell she had been listening to that drum for a while. "Who is looking for you?" he asked. She did not answer at once. She looked down at the locket and the piece of fabric. Her thumb rubbed the blue stitches as if they were a charm. "A man who thinks he can claim people," she said at last in a quiet voice. He gives out marks. He says the mark means protection, but it means control. I wore it because I was told I must. Today I took it off. I am done with it. James felt a slow heat in his chest, not anger exactly, but something close to it. He did not like anyone who turned life into a set of leashes. He had seen that kind of thing wait behind smiles and soft words. He had seen it on the trail, in towns, even in churches. He had no use for it on his land. "You are safe here for now," he said. "You can rest. When the sun drops, we will see what makes sense." "Thank you," she said again, and she stood straighter, as if the word itself could hold her up. He led her to the cottonwood where the shade was wide, the air under it was cool, and the grass kept a hint of green even in dry weeks. He spread his coat on the ground for her to sit. She hesitated, not wanting to take his coat. He set it down anyway and stepped back. She smiled for the first time. A small, honest smile that made her look younger, and for a breath she was only a traveler glad to rest. "Tell me about the name," he said, nodding at the locket. She touched it with her fingertips. "It is not mine," she said, and thought, there is a good person with a child to care for. Evening light spread like a thin gold sheet across the open land, and the cottonwood leaves whispered as if they carried a secret. Clara sat on James's coat and held the locket and the little square of fabric in her hands. She spoke in a soft voice, careful with each word, and James stood nearby, not crowding her, not pushing, just giving her space to let her story settle into the air. "It is not mine," she said again, and her fingers traced the blue stitches. "The name belongs to a child. I met her mother at the river. The mother was kind to me, and I wanted to be kind back. She asked me to be brave, and I said I would try. When I left, she pressed this locket into my hand. 'Carry it past the hills,' she said. 'If I cannot follow soon, find a decent soul and give it safe.' So I took it and the cloth, and I walked away from the camp before the sun rose. I did not tell anyone. I took off the mark I was made to wear. I made myself plain and true." James listened, eyes on the clouds that had turned pink in the low light. He understood the shape of the ask. It was not small. It meant Clara had stepped into a story that was larger than her own. Sometimes good people pulled each other forward like that, one steady hand after another. He brought her bread and a tin cup of coffee from the kitchen and set them within reach. She thanked him and ate slow, as if her body was relearning peace bite by bite. The hoofbeats that had worried her earlier sounded again, a soft drum from the far side of the pasture, and then faded. She glanced up and then relaxed when no rider came. The quiet returned, deeper, made gentle by the small sounds of a ranch in the blue hour. A low from a heifer, the clink of a chain in the wind, the creak of the pump when a breeze touched the handle. "You can stay in the bunkhouse tonight," James said. "It's close to the house, and I'll set a lamp in the window. If someone comes asking questions, I will answer them. But I won't answer for you. You can speak for yourself if you choose, and not if you don't." Clara looked at him then in a way that said she was measuring his words and his heart at once. "Thank you," she said, and she meant the deeper thing, the thing below the words. "Thank you for not taking my story from me now that you know it." As the sky went from pink to purple, James saddled his horse, a patient sorrel with a white star between its eyes. He told Clara he would ride the fence line before full dark and make sure the gates were latched, and the side road near the creek was clear. She stayed under the cottonwood and watched him move along the edge of the land like a careful line drawn around a page. The light on his shoulders made him look tall, but it was the way he carried himself that told more. Steady, grounded, unhurried even when he had reason to hurry. He was still out near the east pasture when a single rider appeared on the ridge. The figure paused for a long moment, looking down at the ranch. There was no rush in that pause and no shout, only a watchful silence. The rider came on then at an easy pace, as if not to stir dust or fear. James shifted in the saddle and rode back toward the yard, not to meet the stranger halfway, but to be present when he arrived. He wanted to be where Clara could see him and where he could see Clara. When the rider reached the fence line, he stopped and tipped his hat. He wore a dark coat, yes, but it was neat and free of show. His horse was well kept. His face was calm, with lines that suggested he had lived enough to learn when to use quiet. "Evening," the man said. His tone was respectful. "Evening," James replied. They stood like that for a moment, with the fence as a plain, honest border between them. "I'm looking for someone," the rider said at last. "A young woman." Came this way before sunset. I want to talk with her. There is a mix-up in town about a piece of property. I'm hoping to clear it up. James did not look back at the cottonwood, but he felt Clara's attention like a hand resting lightly on his shoulder. Folks cross this land now and then, James said. Sometimes they stop for water. Sometimes they pass through. I don't keep track of where every person lays a foot. He kept his voice even, neither warm nor cold. As for property, we guard that careful here. You'll have to be more plain if you want help. The writer considered this and nodded. Fair, sir. My name is Harlan Cole. I do some business for people who ask. He paused, then chose careful words. A mark was taken off today and a token carried away. That rattled a certain man who uses marks to keep his edges smooth. He sent me to retrieve what he says is his, but what belongs to people does not always match what belongs to hearts. I do not like the man's way. I only ride for him now because I gave my word, and I'm looking for the cleanest way to unhook it. James felt his chest ease. This was not a man who lived by pressure. This was someone who had learned to step out from under it with honor if he could. You were told to fetch both woman and token, James said. What do you think should happen? Harlan looked past James at the yard, at the steady lamp in the house window, at the cottonwood shade where the air held a touch of green even in the low light. Then he looked back at the fence rail between them. I think marks mean very little once they are taken off, he said simply. And tokens travel to their right home sooner or later if given care. The child's name that is stitched on that cloth, I know the family. Good people. They moved north last spring. They need peace, not more lines tied around them. Clara stepped forward then, still inside the fence, still within the safe circle the ranch offered. She did not hide. She held the locket and the cloth in her hand so that both men could see without reaching. I'm Clara, she said. I do not want to be returned anywhere. I want only to carry this to a place where it can be safe until it finds the person it belongs to. Harlan took in her face and her voice. He lifted his hat again in a small nod of respect. Miss Clara, he said, I hear you. I also know who will be disappointed if I ride back with empty hands. But I have learned there are better ways to answer a demand than by obeying it outright. James leaned his forearms on the fence rail. What ways? Witnesses, Harlan said. Words set down. Paths that are open to anyone to see. If I ride into town and leave a calm message with the post and the parson both, saying the token was not stolen but kept safe at a neutral place, there will be less talk. If I add that the woman who carried it chose of her own free will to rest under the protection of a rancher, with a clear name and a clean ledger, that will make trouble shrink instead of swell. Clara looked at James. He gave a small nod that said he was willing to let his name and place be part of this path. We can do it that way, he said. I'll stand by it. Harlan smiled a little. Then let me propose this. I will write a letter tonight at your table so that both of you can read it, and I will sign it. I will say I saw Miss Clara in good health and good mind, that she carried a child's token as a favor, not as a thief, and that the token will be held at the church office in town starting 3 days from now. Anyone who believes they have rightful claim can meet there in daylight with the parson present, and with the mother of the named child if she is able to come. No rush, no threats, only talk under a roof where whispers do not win. Clara's eyes warmed. That is a kind plan. It is a firm plan, Harlan said gently. Kindness is the oil that makes firm plans turn without grinding gears. James opened the fence gate and stepped aside, an invitation. Harlan did not ride straight in. He dismounted first, looped his reins, and walked his horse through. That small act, entering on foot, not on a high seat, said more than words about his intent. They went to the porch where the lamp glowed steady. James fetched paper, a bottle of ink, and a straight pen. The three of them sat at the table like neighbors settling an account fair and square. Harlan wrote slow and neat. He read the words out loud after each few lines and took corrections without pride. Clara asked him to include one sentence about why she took off the mark. I took it off because I am a person, not a possession. He wrote that down exactly as she said it, then looked up as if the air itself had become lighter. James asked that his own promise be clear too. While on my land, Clara is under my protection as any guest would be. Harlan wrote that as well. When the letter was done, Harlan signed his name and drew a small line under it. James signed as a witness. Clara did not sign. She did not need to. Her presence was the heart of the letter. They folded the paper and sealed it with a bit of wax. Harlan tucked it into an inside pocket. I'll leave it with the post and the parson before noon tomorrow, he said. After that, anyone who wants to argue can do it on a bench in a bright room, not on a dark road. Clara let out a breath she had been holding for hours, maybe for months. It left her body like a bird released from a quiet hand. Thank you, she said to both men. I was afraid I would be chased from one place to the next with no end. There is an end, James said. Ends look like doors. They are heavy at first, but if you lean on them together, they open. They ate a simple supper, eggs, beans, and a pan of cornbread that Clara warmed with a clean towel while James set the plates. Harlan told them news from towns he had passed, a new school being built near the railroad, a dry summer up north, a family with a little girl learning to read whose name matched the one on the cloth. The sound of such small, good stories filled the room and made it feel sturdy.